This is the continuing story of Alexander of Macedon, the warrior who brought empires to their knees and carried the banner of Greece beyond the edge of the known world. Now, with Persia broken before him, he stands not only as a conqueror, but as a king among kings. The world that once feared his name now opens its gates to him, and the boy from Macedon begins to wear the crown of empire. It is the year 331 BC, more than 2,350 years ago. The Battle of Gaugamela has ended, and the armies of Darius lie scattered across the plain. The great king has fled east, but the heart of Persia lies open. Ahead of Alexander stretch the roads to Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the golden cities of an empire that has ruled the world for 2 centuries. I am Marcus Lucius Varro, historian, soldier, and witness to the age of conquerors. It is my duty to tell what happened next, and to remind you how we arrived here. Before we begin this next chapter of Alexander's march, remember the path that brought him to this moment. The life story of Alexander the Great, the Battle of the Granicus, the Battle of Issus, the Siege of Tyre, and the Battle of Gaugamela. 5 stories, each one a step that turned a prince into a legend, and a legend into the ruler of half the known world. If you have not yet walked that path with him, those stories await you here, on this very channel. Watch them when time allows, for only then will you understand the shadow of what comes next. Now, our story continues. After Gaugamela, Alexander gathered his army, nearly 40,000 strong, and turned south toward the heart of Persia. It took him just over 3 weeks to march across the open plains to Babylon. They crossed the Tigris, the land still scarred by battle, and advanced without resistance. Every fortress surrendered before he reached its gates. Darius had fled too far, and the courage of Persia had gone with him. The first great city to fall was Babylon, the richest city on earth. The gates opened without a fight. The priests and nobles came to greet him not as an enemy, but as a savior. He promised their gods protection, their temples gold, and their people peace. In return, Babylon became his. For days, the Macedonians walked its endless streets, marveling at the hanging gardens and towers carved with lions. Here, Alexander did something no Greek king had ever done. He began to rule not only as a conqueror, but as a Persian king. He took the throne of Babylon, sat beneath the golden canopy, and accepted the titles of the East. The world was beginning to change him. But he could not stay. To the east lay Susa, another jewel of the Persian crown, and the next step on the royal road. There he would find the treasury of the great king, more wealth than any ruler had ever seen. The march from Babylon to Susa took a little over a month. 40,000 men marched in perfect order through the heat of Mesopotamia. No army stood in their way. The walls of Susa opened without a single arrow fired. Inside the citadel lay 200 tons of gold and silver, guarded by the servants of Darius, who now knelt before Alexander. He spared the city. He took its treasure, but not its life. The wealth of Persia now belonged to Greece, and the conqueror of empires sent it west to be melted, minted, and carried home. But Susa was not enough. There was one city left, the heart of Persian pride, the seat of their kings, Persepolis. To the Greeks, it was the name that had haunted them for generations, the city from which Xerxes had once marched to burn Athens. Alexander meant to finish the story. In the winter of 331 BC, he marched east again, through the Zagros mountains. The passes were steep and frozen, the winds cut like knives. The Achaemenid, a fierce mountain tribe, blocked his way and demanded tribute for passage. Alexander gave no tribute. He led his men through a hidden pass, struck at dawn, and destroyed them in a single morning. When their chief begged for mercy, Alexander gave it, but on his terms. The mountains were his. By early spring of 330 BC, Persepolis lay before him. The Persians had tried to burn the bridges and flood the rivers, but nothing could stop the Macedonian advance. The gates of the city opened, and the soldiers of Persia laid down their arms. Alexander entered Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of Darius and his ancestors. He walked through great halls lined with columns and carved reliefs of kings long dead. On the walls, the stone faces of Persia's past stared down upon him. He took the throne of the great king and claimed his seat as Lord of Asia. For a time, the city stood untouched. The Macedonians rested, feasted, and counted their spoils. But there was a tension in the air, the pride of victory mixed with the intoxication of conquest. Then came the night that would mark the end of Persia. At a banquet held in the royal palace, music rose, torches flared, and wine flowed like rivers. Among the guests was Thais, a Greek courtesan, who urged Alexander to take revenge for the burning of Athens a century before. In the heat of drink and triumph, he agreed. A single torch was raised and fire took hold of the wooden roof. The flames spread through the palace, leaping from hall to hall, devouring the carved cedar beams and the painted walls of kings. Some shouted for water, others laughed and threw more oil upon the blaze. By dawn, the city of Persepolis was an inferno. When the fires died, the palace of Xerxes was nothing but ash and blackened stone. The treasures of centuries had melted into rivers of gold that ran through the ruins. The heart of Persia was gone. In the morning, Alexander walked alone among the embers. He said nothing. No man dared to speak to him. He had taken the greatest city of the East, and in his triumph had destroyed it. That day, the conqueror of the world began to understand the cost of power. He could win battles, he could claim empires, but he could not escape himself. And as the smoke of Persepolis drifted into the mountains, word came that Darius still lived, fleeing east with what remained of his court. Alexander turned his eyes to the rising sun. The chase was about to begin. You have traveled the road with Alexander through 3 great cities: Babylon, where he was welcomed as a god; Susa, where he claimed the treasures of the world; and Persepolis, where triumph gave way to fire. Together we have reached the path he takes next, the pursuit of Darius III and the final fall of Persia. But that story, my friend, I will keep for another time. For now, as we end this chapter, I ask something of you. Tell me what you think. Was the burning of Persepolis a tragedy, or an act of justice for what Persia once did to Greece? And what of me, your humble teller of tales? How do you find the telling of this story? Your words and your thoughts mean more than you may know. So please, my friend, share them. Write your comment below and let your voice be heard among those who walk this road of history with us. I ask one more thing before we part. Consider subscribing to this channel so that we may continue together on the next great adventure, the death of Darius and beyond, to the stories of other great warriors and leaders who shaped the world. Your support tells us that you wish for more, and more we shall give you. I am Marcus Lucius Varro, the teller of great stories, joined by other storytellers from their own times and their own memories of what was. Until we meet again, remember this: empires fall, kings fade, but the memory of greatness endures only when it is told. Farewell, my friend. Until the next story.